Hi everyone, welcome to the first installment of Brain Breakers. Here in this channel, I'll give you some pretty counterintuitive problems and riddles that often end up with answers that you probably didn't expect or are just cool to think about. So, for the first problem ever in the channel, let's have a look at this. Can you push on the ground with more force than your weight? Pause for a second here, stop the video if you want to have a think about it, otherwise continue on and you'll find out the answer. So now the short answer is yes, but let's explore further. If you're anything like me, you probably would have gotten down on the ground and tried to push on it with your hands or tried to push on it with your legs and done a little bit of a squat routine or something like that. And funnily enough, in doing that, you would have, in at least one of those scenarios, you would have actually solved the problem. You would have pushed on the ground with more force than your weight. But let's see why that is the case. Let's take a look at this image here, this stick figure image. This is a person just existing. They aren't going anywhere, their forces are balanced, and according to Newton's third thought, the force that they exert on the ground must be the same as the force that the ground exerts on them. Yeah, it's an equal and opposite force. Now, the easy answer to this prompt is, if I am holding a weight, well then of course the force that I exert on the ground must be greater than my weight without any extra add-ons. But I think that's cheating. I want to know if I can do it without any external influences. So then let's think for a second. If I am going to push off the ground with a greater force than my weight, what happens to me in that scenario? Well, let's have a look at jumping, and we'll show that with that stick figure in that animation. Again, as a stationary person, my weight balances the normal force. There is no motion, I'm not going anywhere, so I am balanced. But if I jump, imagine what the acceleration is like. I've sketched it out for you there. I've animated it for you. And you can see that it varies wildly and maybe is a little bit too deep for what we need to know. So let's simplify it then. Let's just look at the most important points. So now you can see if I am jumping off the ground, well, of course, I must have at some point accelerated upwards. I've been stationary. I am at the next point moving upwards, so therefore must have accelerated upwards at some point. When I'm in the air, gravity pulls me back down, and then as I land, I again accelerate upwards or decelerate downwards, which is of course the same thing. I know that F equals ma. I know that my net force must be equal to my mass times my acceleration. My mass isn't changing, so therefore as my acceleration changes, well then my net force changes in the same way. It is proportional and it mirrors the behavior pretty closely. But what forces are acting on me to achieve this net force? Well, I still only have my weight force and the normal force, the force that the ground imparts on me. So you might be able to see where this is going, because if my net force is net upwards, and I only have those two forces, well then my upwards force is overcoming my downwards force, or my normal force is overcoming my weight force. What is causing that normal force? Well, we know that that normal force is the force that the ground exerts on me. And again, Newton pops up. How does that ground impart that force on me? Well, I must impart a force on it, an equal and opposite force, an equal and opposite reaction. So, if I look specifically at this interaction between myself on the ground, then these forces are still equal and opposite. So whatever force the ground imparts on me, I impart on it, and you see that in this situation, I must have pushed off on the ground with a much greater force than my weight. We can prove this as well. Grab your bathroom scale at home and try it out for yourself. You can see that I've recorded myself jumping off the scale, and the scale is measuring what it thinks is my weight, but is really just the normal force, right? And you can see that it varies massively as I jump off of it. You can see that it goes down and up, and it goes up massively, especially as I push myself off and I accelerate upwards at that highest rate. So, in conclusion, yes, you definitely can push on the ground with more force than your weight, but this likely means that you are going to be accelerating upwards. And if you're accelerating upwards, well, of course, at some point you must leave the ground. So, yes, the answer is yes, but it's only a temporary possibility.